Wall Street closes mixed even as U.S. economic growth for the third quarter is revised higher to 5.2% from the initial 4.9%. Stocks in the Asia-Pacific fall largely across the board ahead of important economic data from key markets, while the GIFT Nifty suggesting a lower start for the Indian market. Crude prices rise about 2%. Brent trades above $81 a barrel ahead of today's OPEC Plus meeting slated to discuss production cuts, while supply disruptions in the Black Sea also aid the upmove. Gold prices trade near 7-month highs on expectations of rate cuts by the Fed early next year. India's second quarter GDP will be announced this evening. A CNBC TV 18 poll sees growth at a little over 7% on a weak base and is likely to exceed the RBI's forecast of 6.5% growth in the second quarter. Tata Technologies, the first Tata Group IPO in 19 years, will list on the exchanges today. The issue was subscribed over 69 times, receiving a record 73 lakh plus applications, higher than the LIC IPO in May 2022. In other listings today, Federal Bank's NBFC arm, Fedfina, and specialty oil producer Gandhar Oil Refinery will also list on the exchanges. Good morning in the Mumbai News Center. I'm Sonal Bhutra. You're watching Power Breakfast. Well, looks like it's going to be a very busy day. A lot of entrants in the secondary market, and we do have the monthly expiry as well when it comes to the futures and options space. So before we discuss all of that, let's take a look at what the Asian markets are doing. Largely lower, we have to say. We have a slew of economic data which has come by. In fact, the Chinese data, the November manufacturing PMI, it has come in at 49.4% versus an estimate of 49.8 is the number. It is slightly lower than what the street was working with. But apart from that, if we look at something like a Nikkei, which is lower by 0.4%, Hang Seng has hit a new low. It is down around 0.4%. It's lower as the lowest level in the month, actually. The Taiwanese index is lower by 29 points. And across the board, we are seeing some cuts that have come by as well. But if we look at the GIFT Nifty, that should come up for you on the screen because we'll see what the implied open is suggesting. Yesterday was a good day for the markets. Today, it is indicating that it could be absolutely flat with some positive bias, so 4 points higher if we compare it with the Nifty futures. So let's see which way things go, because usually during the expiry dates, the last 1 hour of trade, where we see massive moves as well. So that's about the Asian markets. But let's talk about the US markets now. Wall Street ended mixed. The major averages remain on track to close November with sizable gains, which would end a 3-month losing streak. The S&P 500 is up 8.5% in November, while the Nasdaq has advanced nearly 11%. The Dow was up 7.2% in November, on pace for its best month since October 2022. CNBC's Bertha Coombs gets us a wrap of all the action on Wall Street.
U.S. markets mixed across the major averages, but still on track for the biggest monthly gain of the year. The Dow ending the day in positive territory, up 14%. The S&P 500 slipping 4%, while the tech-heavy Nasdaq lost 23 points. The U.S. economy, meantime, grew at a stronger pace in the third quarter than previously estimated, according to the Commerce Department. GDP accelerating at a 5.2% clip, spurred by better-than-expected business and investment, stronger government spending as well. However, consumer spending came up a bit short of expectations. It rose just 3.6% compared to an estimate of 4%. Cigna and Humana, meantime, are reportedly in talks to merge. The companies are said to be discussing a stock and cash deal that could be finalized by the end of the year, according to the Wall Street Journal. If the merger were to go through, it would be a mega deal, combining the nation's 4th and 5th largest publicly traded health insurers by membership. Cigna has a roughly $80 billion market valuation. Humana's is around $63 billion. Both companies saw their stocks slide after news broke of the potential deal. That's what's happening here in the U.S. Back over to you in Mumbai.
Okay, all right. That is the action from Wall Street. But let's also listen into some expert opinion on the U.S. economy and markets as well.
The economy has proven its resilience since early last year, when a lot of people were anticipating a recession. Actually, early last year, I said we're actually in a recession. It's just a rolling recession affecting different industries at different times. We had something like that in the mid-1980s. I also felt that inflation would turn out to be very spiky, as it often is. There's a lot of worries that it was going to be like the 1970s all over again. But in fact, it's turned out to be relatively transitory. I know for some people that seems a little bit naive to say that it was transitory. But in the grand scheme of things, in the scope of history, it really has come down remarkably quickly here in a very symmetrical fashion. And a lot of that's been led by goods. I think rent inflation is going to come down.
I wouldn't agree that the economy is in a sugar high per se. I think, yes, if you look at the Q3 GDP data at 5.2%, you think, wow, things are roaring. But and they were in that quarter, but I do think some of that is more of a one-off. And there are reasons to suspect that the economy is going to moderate. Some of the growth has been driven by fiscal policy as well as prior monetary policy easing. But we've been tightening policy for a long time, and we're engaged in quantitative tightening, and fiscal stimulus is likely to run its course. So we just think that consumer balance sheets are strong enough. We think that the labor market will hold up enough.
Okay, all right. That's all about global market action, but how will these cues impact our own markets? We have our research team joining in to tell you just that, the market setup, the stocks that are likely to be in the news, and the action from the F&O space as well. Hey guys, a very good morning to all of you. Ekta, let me come across to you first up. Some muted cues coming in from the global markets today.
Well, yes, muted cues coming in, but overall the momentum seems to be strong for us because the market did build on to Tuesday's gains yesterday. So the Nifty reclaimed 20,100. Nifty, Auto, Realty, Energy, all of them were at record highs on an intraday basis. And the Nifty mid-cap rally continued. It hit a record high. FII's net bought marginally, so 72 odd crores, and DII's net bought quite heftily, so over 2,300 odd crores. For today, in terms of cues, we have the F&O expiry, but the global setup, while yes, the US markets was a bit mixed and they ended lower, they are just less than 1% away from their closing highs. We had the GDP data which was higher, consumer spending which was weak, but nonetheless, it seems as though it's on its way to close a very strong year and probably hit those highs as well. Asia largely weak at this point in time, the GIFT Nifty indicating a positive start. Oil prices are in focus, they've risen ahead of that OPEC plus meet. Key factors to watch: the state election exit polls this evening, India Q2 GDP data which is this evening. It's likely to moderate on a normalizing base as well as an erratic monsoon. We have core sector data for the month of October and that OPEC plus meet. Watch for key indices because the Nifty bank has now risen for the fourth straight session, so there is strength there, and the mid-cap index has ended higher for the 19th straight session. You did mention that a lot of stocks would be in focus on account of listings as well, so that would be something to watch out for.
Oh yes, there's a slew of listings which we're expecting today. Thank you so much, Ekta, for all those cues. But the other stocks that are on our radar, Hurmaz is joining us with that list. Hey, morning.
Morning, Sonal. And I'll start off with Ultratech, which has entered the Jharkhand market by acquiring 0.54 MTPA cement grinding assets of Burnpur Cement, and that is done for a consideration of around 170 crore rupees. Thomas Cook, Fairbridge Capital, is looking to sell around 8.5% stake in the company through an OFS, which will be opened today and tomorrow. The OFS includes a 6.8% base offer and a 1.7% green shoe option as well. But the big stock today will be Metro Brands and Nykaa, because both of them have been granted exclusive rights to operate Foot Locker stores. Metro Brands will be operating the Foot Locker stores in India, and Nykaa will be the exclusive e-commerce partner for Foot Locker, and it will be also operating the India website for Foot Locker. Zee Entertainment, that has clarified on an NDTV report saying that the report is factually incorrect, and they said that the merger will be completed as per the scheme of arrangement that has been approved by the Mumbai bench of the NCLT. GNFC, the share buyback will open on the 1st of December, will close on the 7th. PCBL has also signed a JV agreement with an Australian company called Kinaltech. It will own 51% of that JV with a $16 million infusion, and it will also infuse another $28 million in phases to set up that manufacturing unit. And lastly, Jupiter Wagons, which has launched a QIP to raise funds, and sources tell CNBC TV 18 that the issue size is worth 300 crores with an oversubscription option of 200 crore rupees. The indicative price is 315 rupees per share, which is a 7.1% discount to Wednesday's closing price. Back to you.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much, Hormas, for that list. But let's talk about the F&O space now. Nigel is joining us. Hey, morning, Nigel.
Well, morning, Sona. Let's see whether or not the Bulls can end this series on a high, because it's been spectacular, nothing short of that. The FIs at the start of the series were feeling very confident on the short side, and we've seen in the past where they get overconfident on the short side, well, we see a big short covering bounce, and that's precisely the way it played out this time around as well. Just take a look at the short positions. From a peak of around 175,000 net short contracts, that's come down to around 115,000 odd. And in percentage terms, from around 89% short positioning, that's come down to around 71%, telling you the kind of short covering we have seen, and the FIs have got stumped on the wrong side. Now, a couple of factors have played out here. They've aggressively net short. The global cues as well were favorable. And also, we did see institutional flows, they came back in style. Now, in April, we did see that the FIs were aggressively net short, and we said, wow, we got closer around 900 points. Well, guess what? In November series, we're up more than 1,100 points, telling you the kind of velocity we have seen in terms of the short covering out here. Two strikes were active. 20,000 put yesterday, 20,100 put, and yesterday was a perfectly good-looking screen from the bullish perspective. Both those two strikes, they saw close to 2.4 crore shares. Remember, that expiry plays out today, so both those two contracts will expire today. And because of the aggressive put writing that we saw, the PCR from around that 1 odd mark, that's moved to closer to around 1.5. Now, levels that we're looking at, well, the highest open interest is at around the 20,200 call. So that's why, just plugging in the premium out there, and all-time highs are around 20,222. So you have resistance that comes up for you on the screen. But the 20,000 put as well, post a big addition that we saw yesterday, that has the highest open interest. So on the support zone, 19,975, that should be the broad range. And that's what, positioning as such, that we expire in this range itself. But can we end this series on a high? Well, time will tell. For the time being, though, it's been a very, very good series where the FIs have got stumped on the wrong side. Back to you.
Oh, yes, that's right. Thank you so much, Nigel, Hormaz and Ekta for joining us and prepping us up for this trading day ahead. Time for a break now. When we return, Tata Technologies will make its much-awaited debut on the Lal Street today. We'll get you all the details on the other side. Stay tuned for that. Welcome back. You're still tuned into Power Breakfast on CNBC TV 18. Let's now talk about some important macro cues we'll be tracking today. Second quarter GDP, that is for the months of July, August and September, will be announced today. A CNBC TV 18 poll sees the number coming in at 7.03% versus 7.8% in the first quarter and 6.2% year-on-year. Part of the strong showing will be due to a weak base. Agriculture is expected to contribute 2.7% versus 3.5% in the first quarter, while services like trade, hotels, financial services and public administration are seen doing better than manufacturing and industry. The CNBC TV 18 poll suggests nominal GDP may come in close to 8% because of weak wholesale price inflation. Remember, this will be the last big macro number before the RBI's MPC meeting on December 6th to 8th. But as we promised, let's now focus on the list of new debutants on the Lal Street today, and specifically on Tata Technologies, because that's the big one to watch out for as well. My colleague Rima is joining us with all the details on that much-awaited listing. Rima, tell us more.
Thanks so much for that. So much excitement, so much frenzy. The first IPO from the Tata Group in 19 years. The last one was TCS in 2004, and the IPO saw bumper subscription overall at 69.4 times. And in terms of total applicants, the Tata Tech IPO received 73.58 lakh applications and 1.5 lakh plus crore in terms of investment. In fact, the total applications received for Tata Tech, I believe, has broken LIC's record of 73.38, which happened in May of 2022. So let me quickly tell you what worked for Tata Tech. One, it was a small issue, just about 3,042 crore in size. Two, the valuations were reasonable. Tata Tech at 500 rupees, which is the issued price, was offered at 32 times past multiple FY23 PE, which is at a discount to all the listed peers like a KPIT, L&T Technology, Tata Elxsi. Third, the financials of the company have been steady. Now, this is a company whose top line last year was about 4,500 crore rupees. It grew at 28% in this year, first half of FY24. The prior year, it grew at about 28%. The year before, at 24%. Margins, too, over a 4-year trajectory, have seen an improvement. It was at 16.5%, and now it's hovering around that 18 to 19%. But the good news is the company, in an interview, told us that their North Star margins are 20% plus. So they've aligned their business plan in order to keep improving their margins and go up to 20% plus. Fourthly, it's a Tata brand. There is a lot of respect which comes along with the Tata Group companies. Fifth, it operates in a space, the manufacturing ER&D, particularly aerospace, automotive, which is seeing a lot of disruption and seeing a lot of spends by clients. So the space itself is very hot, and we know how companies like KPIT Tech have performed. And finally, this was a pure offer for sale. The company didn't raise any money, but they have cash in the books. The cash in the books as of last year was about $150 million. Back to you.
Okay, all right. So that's the big listing that we are watching out for today. In fact, we'll be joined by the management of Tata Technologies at 12:45 p.m. to discuss the listing, the business and more. Do stay tuned to CNBC TV 18 for that conversation. And with that, we'll slip into another break. When we come back, we'll talk all about the commodities market. So stay tuned for that. Welcome back. You're still tuned into Power Breakfast. Well, it's time to talk all about commodities now. Manisha Gupta is joining us with an update from that space. Hi, Manisha. Good morning.
Morning, and thank you for that. Pardon me. It is the most important OPEC and allies meeting today, and there is an expectation that OPEC and allies will set a production policy for 2024, which could also include considering additional 1 million barrels per day of an output cut. So ahead of that, we have seen the prices hold at $82 per barrel mark. Apart from that, the street is also reacting to the Chinese data. The manufacturing in the month of November has shrunk, and the services sector growth at 11-month lows as well is something that seems to be putting pressure on prices.
Okay, there is some pressure on prices today. Thank you so much, Manisha, for joining us with those details, and take care of your health as well. But moving on now, over 140 delegates from across the world will arrive in Dubai for COP28 today, the annual climate summit. But this will not include US President Joe Biden and China Xi Jinping, heads of the world's two largest economies and top polluters. Prime Minister Modi is scheduled to be in attendance. Radhika Udas and Arundhati Ramanan preview the COP28 climate summit.
The climate summit this year comes at a crucial time as global temperatures hit record high, frequency of climate disasters has risen, and the simmering controversy over UAE's COP28 presidency. World leaders will be working on finding a common ground to tackle climate change and financing energy transition. What is different this year? The first ever global stocktake will conclude at this summit. A global stocktake is the assessment of countries' progress in meeting the Paris Agreement goals.
UN's latest report suggests that climate action plans remain insufficient to limit global temperature rise to 1.5 degrees Celsius. The world is now staring at a potential warming of 2.5 to 2.9 degrees Celsius unless countries go much further than the current pledges. UN also finds that greenhouse gas emissions need to be cut 43% by 2030 to limit this temperature rise by the end of the century. A second UN report assessed nations' plans to transition to net zero emissions by mid-century. The report indicates that greenhouse gas emissions could be around 63% lower in 2050 if all the strategies are implemented on time.
Climate finance will also take center stage. Low-income nations will need at least $200 billion every year by 2023 to adapt. Wealthy nations will be tasked with also setting up the Loss and Damage Fund. As per an OECD report, rich nations have fallen significantly short in raising $100 billion per year towards climate mitigation. COP28 has also been embroiled in controversy over UAE, one of the world's largest oil producer, hosting the summit. This year's president is Sultan Al Jaber, who heads UAE's giant state oil company, ADNOC. A BBC report suggests that UAE planned to use COP28 to promote deals for its national oil and gas companies as per leaked documents. This alleged dual role of Jaber has faced international criticism and risks the integrity of the COP28. In Mumbai with Radhika Udas, Arundhati Ramanan.
Okay, all right. That is what we are expecting from the big climate summit that starts today. We'll keep getting you more updates as and when there is some movement on decisions at the climate summit as well. Let's move on to the latest on state assembly elections. After weeks of campaigning, Telangana state begins its single-phase election today. The state will see a three-way battle between Congress, Bharatiya Janata Party and the currently ruling BRS. Polling begins in 119 constituencies from 7 a.m. and will continue till 5 p.m. Telangana is also the last state to go into polls this year. The exit poll results for all the 5 states will be declared today after 6 p.m. The final results will be announced on December 3. Okay, all right. With that, we'll take your leave on this edition of Power Breakfast. But do stay tuned. Bazaar Morning Call comes up next.